So we're joined by my friend, author of My Coinz Journal, real estate broker, speaker, Jackson State alum, Brandee Harrington. We thank you so much for joining us today. This is our personal finance class at Velma Jackson. I've got a room full here with me. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us, fresh off your vacation to Europe.
Thank you for having me. You're very welcome.
All right. So before we get into the My Coins Journal and all the different financial topics you cover and really speak about, just give us a brief background of your education and because I know you're a graduate of Jackson State and Belhaven. So take us through that about your background and how you got into this.
Okay, so a little bit about my background. I am a proud alumni of the Jackson State University. I have a undergrad in marketing, and then I went on to Belhaven where I have a master's in management. And from there, I got into sales and marketing, obviously. And then now I am a commercial real estate broker. And so I've done extensive additional classes in the real estate realm and have done extensive research and more classes and learning as it relates to real estate investment, as well as budgeting, savings, and things of that nature. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. Now, and that's a great segue because you talk about budgeting and saving, and you've written a book, My Coins Journal, and I know you got some announcements about that as well. I'll let you make. But you talk about this. Your mother was the one that inspired this. So talk about why you thought it was so important to come up with this book about getting financial documents in line and about having all your finances set for anything that could happen.
Absolutely. So what transpired the Coinz Legacy Keeper was really birthed from my mother. When my mother suddenly got sick, I realized as the only girl that, we never really kind of talk about these type of conversations. We really, I guess we think we have time to talk about it. I don't know if there's an easy button or staples that's going to come down out of the sky and say, hey, now it's a pause button, right? And we're saying now this is the best time to have this conversation, but life does not happen like that. And what I realized at that moment was, while I can plan for these kind of conversations, we can plan to go to the Jackson State games, we can plan to go to vacations or Europe, we can do all of these different planning. We don't want to talk about emergencies. And so when we're faced with an emergency, oftentimes our families are the ones who in an emergency are scrambling to find those important documents and or resources, while you may be in the situation where you're unable to talk or you're just very much out of it and you are sitting there thinking that it's getting taken care of sometimes, and you're like, wait, is it, or do you know? And so what is known to us now as the Coinz Legacy Keeper was penned as a result of that conversation or the lack thereof with my mother.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people don't have these things aligned. Even when my grandfather passed in 2011, my grandmother, who had
Mhm.
known he had been sick for over a year, did not have a state issued ID, did not have a social security card, did not have power of attorney, and all of those things. Even though we have kids in high school now, that's something that you need to at least be aware of and know that things need to be taken care of because it's bad enough when there's a tragedy in your family, but you really can put a huge financial strain not only on yourself but on your family as well if things are not in line.
Absolutely. I think we see it now more than ever, where we're seeing people fight. Families are more divided. And I think it really is an attack of the enemy because of the fact that when we can continue to fight each other for resources or just under disagreements or misunderstandings, it continues to put a wedge in families, right? And I think it's because we're not communicating. Just like you and I having this dialogue together, it was scheduled. We have to get back to communicating. It's good to have, obviously, tools now and things like that, but conversation will never be something that I think we need to just think, oh, it's haphazard, we can just do what we want to. No, we now have all type of tools where even if family members don't necessarily live in the same city with you, you can still loop them in if they need to be in that conversation with this technology that we do have. So there now is no excuse. And even when you think about the holidays approaching, that is really even a better time to start having this conversation. But if you cannot wait, definitely because of this research and technology, start having these tools now and utilize rather these tools to ensure you and your family are having these conversations now.
Absolutely. And look, Yeah, and you know me, and you know how I feel about things, especially these rural communities. These rural Black communities were left behind on a lot of education for a long time, and that's not their
Absolutely.
fault. But times have changed,
Mhm.
technology has changed, resources has changed. So it's important for these kids to be aware of things that are available to them now, even not just in emergency situations, knowing things like how to save for retirement, knowing things like how to use apps, how to budget. Because look, we have kids say, "I want to work XYZ," and all they see is the paycheck, but they're not thinking about what they need to do to set aside for retirement. It's sad that we have seen so many people have to work into their 70s and 80s because no one educated them about, look, you need to start saving for retirement as soon as you start getting paychecks. I'm not even an expert, and I know that. Especially some of these companies that kids want to work for, these Nissans, Amazons, they have programs where they will match up to a certain percent of
Mhm.
retirement that you put in. So you're getting free money every month that you never even have to work for.
Absolutely. And I think the reality, even before we can get into actually matching, let's talk about when you said budgeting is really start understanding your numbers. I talk to people all the time. You have to know what's coming in and what's going out. Oftentimes in our communities, we don't even know what we're making because we're not having the conversation. So the problem is we will literally say, okay, I make X amount, right? But if I make X amount and then I don't know what my bills are, how do you know what you're paying every month? In order to save and match and get ready for retirement, I have to know those numbers. It is critical whether you know it or not. Just like you know what you make every month. What are your expenses? So it's called debt, and we have obviously we have debt, which is we have to have, and then there's assets and debt. So we have liabilities and assets, and so we have to think about all those numbers. But the problem is most people don't want to think about it. They just think I get a money, I'm going to spend, 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 but they're never telling their money where to go. They're never directing their coins, right? To tell my money, hey, I got to pay for the mortgage. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. They don't like the B word. And I tell people all the time, the B word that I'm referring to is budgeting. It's not a bad word. It's just that you have to tell your money where to go, because if you don't, you can then be in overdraft. You can then be overspending for stuff that you don't, because you don't know where your money is. And I think that's one critical step that we've kind of glazed over, because now we've made it so accessible to get so many different things, because now you have after for, pay for, whatever these things, and it continues to put you in more and more debt, because the more I can continue to have you spending more and more of this money that you don't even know you have or what's coming in and out, the more you can be in debt.
Yeah, and something that we're going to do in this class in a few weeks is we're going to talk about how to read a pay stub. That may seem silly, but even though I'm a salaried employee, I look at my pay stub every month just to make sure I know, first of all, in case there's any mistakes. And I told the kids this, there was a mistake on my paycheck last year. It wasn't intentional and it wound up being fixed. But if I had not gone and actually looked at it, that'd have been some money I would not have had. So knowing
Absolutely.
how to read a pay stub, knowing what's coming out, at least being from, and you don't have to be a tax expert, but at least being familiar with what's being taken out every month. Little things like that are things kids don't think about, but it's things they need to know.
Absolutely. And they need to know how to read that, because you're right. At the end of the day, you need to know where that goes, and then how does it play into the big scheme of things. I think people just know, oh, you just pay taxes. Well, what do those taxes do? What is your Social Security? What is your FICA? Until you start having those conversations about money and not be scared to talk about it, I think we continue to have those conversations. We keep sweeping under the rugs, but then we keep growing through school. And I guess at some point again, we think an easy button is going to come out the sky and say, hey, now I'm going to learn it. No, it doesn't happen like that. And I think we just have to start embracing financial literacy and bringing people back into having these conversations, because it's well needed and much needed at this point.
Yeah, and then obviously as a real estate broker, you deal a lot with banks and mortgages and loans. And we're having a mortgage loan person Friday to talk about the home buying process. But you deal a lot with all the local banks when people are getting home loans. I think it's extremely important for these kids of all ages to start getting familiar with banking. Having a Cash App card is not having a bank account. I use Cash App, and it definitely has its place for certain things, but that's not where my money is going every month whenever I get a paycheck. That's not where anything I have saved is going. So, what can these kids learn to start getting familiar with banking? Because if you want to get a loan to start a business, to buy a home, or any type of mortgage, you're going to have to be familiar with how banks work. So, what can they do now to start getting familiar with that?
Absolutely. Let's definitely talk about the elephant in the room. Cash App is not a bank. Let me repeat, Cash App, they are not banks. And the problem is we have so many people who are now using it as banks that it's actually making it's making it a little bit hard for you to be able to get any type of banking situation where you're getting a house or loan, whatever, because people are thinking it's a bank. A couple of things exist with that. Number one, if someone was to hack into your Cash App and get all your money out of there, guess what? It's not backed by the FDIC. So guess what? Guys, you don't get your money back. That means I was in a meeting with the FDIC on some other stuff and we had that conversation. And the problem is people are not aware, consumers are not aware that you using that as a bank and someone comes in there and wipes all that out. No one is going to pay you your money back. No one because it's not a bank. Your bank is still your number one friend. Number two, banks you create relationships with. You cannot think that a Cash App who doesn't know who you are, who really doesn't know you from Adam and Eve, can be able to really help you and when you need it the most. So if you're not going into that bank, if you're not establishing rapport, if you're not going to let them know what you're doing, what your business is doing, I'm ready to buy a house, I'm ready to get into a business, whatever that looks like, how will they know if you've never made that relationship? So you want to be able to have a relationship with your bank. The third thing that banks help is that you now can be able to be a credible person when it comes down to the home loan. They're going to talk about that, but guess what? When they get ready to pull those bank statements, they're needing bank statements, not Cash App statements. They need bank statements. Now, Venmo, not everything else that we have out there that's made it easier to do business with, but it's not a sustainable nor viable means in order to do your business, because business still are going to rely on institutions and banks and from a lending perspective that are backed by government agencies in order to fund your goals. So I think we have to ensure that people understand it may be fun, it might be cute, it might be easier, but is that necessarily where you want to go if you are trying to be credible in order to establish yourself from a home buying or business or whatever the case may be? You want to be able to have all of your documents together, and a bank is how you have to do that.
Absolutely. As far as paying friends or small businesses that I know, obviously it has a place there, but I couldn't agree more that too many kids are treating it like a bank. And especially these ones that are about to start working, 16, 17 years old. We're here at Velma Jackson. There's 3 or 4 banks in downtown Canton that would be more than happy to help them open up a student checking account to start establishing that banking history. And they have great overdraft protection, and you can start establishing that. Look, I've been working for this long, and you could, if you want to get a loan at 19, 20 years old, you've got 4 years of bank statements.
Absolutely. And I think we have to think about it as it's not a bad thing to have a bank. I think in so many times we are thinking, like you said, Cash App is always just easier. But again, you're going to be at a point where, and as you enter into adulthood, you're going to need a loan or you're going to need something for you want a house or whatever the case may be. I don't know anybody else who's gone out here and bought a house cash and just paid a check. I'm gonna be honest. Even I'm gonna be honest, even if you go buy a cash house, right? Because people say, well, I can just pay cash for it. I know students, right? Get it. Yes, you could, but guess what we're gonna ask you to do? Go to your bank and verify funds. Before we can even close on this property, I'm going to ask you to go to your bank and get me a statement from your bank that you have funds with that amount, whatever that looks like. And you're like, really? Yes, because we don't know where that money is coming from. So my job is to verify that you're bringing me credible money. We call it seasoned money, meaning that you just didn't get it out your mattress or underneath your floor. And so we have to get from a bank that has been in the bank account. So that's called seasoned money. And so we cannot just do that. And so and you can't come to closing with that type of cash at a closing table. So again, and we can't use Cash App. Let me say this again, please. We cannot use your Cash App to close on a loan. We cannot go to the closing table and take your Cash App and bring that over into this transaction. It will not work. Will not. We cannot have you to move we can't wait on you to move your savings to your checking to have this to help. No, it has to be in certified funds, meaning you have to get a check verified by the bank that these funds came out of your account, not anybody else's account but yours. So
Absolutely.
let me just go with all of that right now.
Absolutely. Now, another thing I want to talk about is we just mentioned you just got back from Europe, and I'm super jealous that you got to take that great vacation. But I think a big problem is that these kids see TikTok, they see Instagram, they see these quote influencers living these fancy lives, but it's very easy to fall into that trap thinking that you have to do the same thing. First of all, most of these, I would say almost all these influencers and the celebrities we see, a lot of them really don't have that much money. I always say famous does not equal rich.
Yeah.
And and you know, and look, I follow celebrities on social media. I enjoy seeing some of what they do, but that is not going to dictate how I make financial decisions and how I'm trying to live my life to show off to other people. So, what is something you've seen that young people can do to not fall into that trap?
So honestly, I'm glad you asked me that question, Greg. I just had a conversation with someone else interviewing me on this same topic. And I think one of the things that was eye-opening is that now we're seeing more and more students and people and individuals go to California, right? And in California, you can rent a lot of these different houses. You can go get the Chanel bags and the Louis Vuitton and the Gucci and say, I went on a shopping spree, but they're empty bags that have nothing in them. And I think you can and they can rent their clothes and they can rent these studios for an hour. But the problem is we're only seeing a snippet of someone's life, right? We literally, and I know some people who literally personally on social media, they look like they did a lot of amazing things, but they were sleeping on their friend's couch because they were homeless. I personally know, like not here's, I personally know. So I'm saying that to say, you can't get so caught up on reality that you forget that, or at least what you think is reality, and think that it makes common sense. If everyone could do it, don't you think everyone would do it? It's not reality. It is a false sense of reality. So I think my first advice would be don't get caught up with what you're seeing, because oftentimes what you're seeing is really a mirage and it's not necessarily real. It just looks good. It's for entertainment purposes only, right? Life does not happen that way. Even all of your millionaires, if you study history, I know this generation thinks that they're going to do it faster, easier than everybody else, right? The problem is all millionaires, even them will tell you it did not happen overnight. It was a slow progress. And I don't know where we think we have this. We have to go from 0 to 100 in 2 days, but we're not going to make it in 2 days. We're not going to make it to be millionaires from if today is Wednesday, by Friday, if all of us are millionaires Friday, then everybody will be millionaires. But life does not work like that. So let's deal with the realm of reality and realize that you won't learn your necessary steps if you go too fast, too quickly. Because a lot of times, think about it, you also have heard people who do what? Who get all this money overnight, and what happens to them? They lose it all because they didn't learn, like they don't know how to manage money. They don't know how to manage all of this new success. So don't think that everything you see on TV is real. I tell my children all the time, like everything we see is not always gold, right? It could be sprinkled fairy pixie dust, okay? So the reality of it is everybody's not doing it. If that's the case, then everybody in America will be doing. And so since that's not the reality, let's think of how do we know this is real? Let's test it. Let's see, do you really think these people are all doing this every day? Probably not. Because if that's the case, then let's, I tell people, give me your receipts. Show me where you are. Even when it comes down to savings and in real estate, show me where you are. Show me if you have these different things. They show you a blighted house. Oh, I'm doing all these, but what are you doing? What does your real estate portfolio look like? What else have you done? I think we have to start calling people out and stop trying to chase people who reality aren't really doing what we think. We think they are, but we are caught up in the fixation of, oh, I got to do what they're doing because they said it. But in reality, they're really not doing that. And just be honest with ourselves that our pace and our timing is all designed to go at a certain place. We're going to get there, but it doesn't mean we're going to happen overnight. And even for me, when I first started, in school, I remember my first job, like most people, was like at a McDonald's. I knew I wasn't going to be at McDonald's forever, but I started there. But guess what? I can use transferable skills, customer service skills, to be able to help me go somewhere else. So you cannot think that just because you're staying here right now, this is your period. This is going to be where you're going to be forever. You're taking that job to use that to go to your next level. From this job, I can use this job. From this job and that. It's nothing wrong with working. I don't know where we've gotten in society that everybody's influencers. Everybody's going to make $100,000 doing focusing on content. I don't know where that came from, but the reality of it is it doesn't work like that, because you still have to have some type of skill sets in terms of math, budgeting, savings, communication, all of those different skills that you're going to learn with having a job. You're going to learn that. And then you're going to realize that you have to have customer service. You got to have a brand. You got to have marketing. You have to have shipping. You got to have, what happens if they return and stuff. It doesn't matter. So you're not going to just learn it if just because you are making content, or if you're producing a product, or if you're producing this, you still got to learn certain things on how to deal with business. And I think we've not taught people reality on what it looks like when it's all pretty, but then what does it look like when it's not pretty? So I know that's a long answer, but my short answer is don't get caught up in what you see. Follow your own race, and I think you'll be fine.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny about how you said that. I remember a couple of these rappers in recent years have been called out because they were renting an Airbnb and then were saying they bought the house. I know Rick Ross and Soulja Boy recently were both busted online. They were claiming they bought these multi-million-dollar houses, and the Airbnb owners are like, no, look, I own that. They just rented it out for 2 days.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, again, like I on rent, we manage our own rental properties, and people rent stuff and they can do certain things. We actually had somebody do a documentary inside one of our rentals. And it was because, again, it was, a rental, but if you've seen it, it was like, oh, did they live there? It's just they rented it again, but you have to be able to own to be in a more of a situation where you can control the narratives. And I think that's the reality people don't want to talk about. When you own things, that's the true, and the kids say boss move. That's the real move, because now you're in a better sense of ownership, because now you own and you can control the monopoly piece of game of life. But when you're renting, you're a consumer. That's that debt you're paying. So Rick Ross and all them that are renting that Airbnb, it looked good, but they paid somebody for that. Buy your own. And so that's what you want to be able to do, is be in an ownership category. Savings get you there, buying and owning, but you can't go buy it if you don't have your savings and you haven't done the right proper steps to know where your money is going, how to be in a position to do that, making sure you have everything from a credit standpoint together, as well as making sure that you saved up for your down payment. And all of the steps that you're going to hear about on Friday, all of those are necessary in order for you to be able to be in a position to own.
Absolutely. Now, before I get to the students' questions, I want to talk about something you just mentioned, because this is so important. And this is something I get on a soapbox on all the time. I know they get sick of it, but I know I can speak for all the other teachers that'll see this later as well. The biggest battle we face is getting these kids to have sales skills, marketing skills, personal communication skills, and especially these young Black kids, because there was a time where they would not have had access. They're starting to have access. They're starting to have more opportunities. They've got to be able to sell themselves to show that they deserve to have these things. Being able to walk in a room and introduce yourself. They get so nervous and so scared when I ask them to do a presentation. It's not to be mean. It's to get them more comfortable speaking, to get more comfortable selling, to get more comfortable saying, look, here's what I can offer. Here's why I'm the best at this. Because in order to make this money that we dream about, we've got to be able to get our foot in the door, and we've got to be able to sell the fact. Look, I know you're a real estate person. Somebody doesn't have to have a whole bunch of fancy degrees to be a great salesperson. Somebody doesn't have to be, that doesn't have to come from a lot of money to be a great salesperson. These are skills that you can learn right now and be fantastic at, and it can lead to all sorts of opportunities.
Absolutely. So if I understand the question in terms of why you need these skill set, you have to be able to sell yourself. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that you're probably nervous, and most people get nervous about, is talking to others, right? And I truly believe, this is just what I think, this generation, hear me out, students, oftentimes, and I've seen it, is that we grew up, and a lot of them grew up on using tablets. Those tablets now have become friends in there. So there hadn't been a two-way dialogue. And to now come into a situation in a room where I have to talk to an adult and talk to someone, that's a little bit nerve-wracking, right? That's nerve-wracking, right? We don't want to do that. But how do I know what you can do if you don't talk to me? You can't be so shy and so timid that you don't want to hold a conversation and look at me in my face when I'm talking to you, because then that makes me say, well, who am I hiring? Or why would I buy your product? Or fill in the blank. In order for me to know who you are and what you represent, you have to have a conversation with me. You have to look me in your face, and you have to be open and to be able to keep a conversation between the two of us as dialogue. Again, we're conversing, but you're selling yourself. It is a skill set. It is not something everyone likes to do, nor is obviously public speaking like something you want to do. Why? Because then everybody is looking at you. I get that. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is that you're getting past your fears. telling your fears to get us to the side, because no one wants to hear themselves talk. No one wants to hear that everybody's saying, well, what if I say something wrong? What if I don't say the right word? It doesn't matter. You're going to get better. But if you don't ever start somewhere, again, we talked about that just a few minutes ago, you're starting, you're not going to be there forever, just like when you were never a baby forever, right? You have to think about it like, until I do it this one time, and a couple of times, it may be a little rocky, but every time you continue to push yourself out of your comfort zone, or out of the discomfort zone rather, then you get better to ensure that you are be able to be the best salesperson and or person that's selling whatever it is, because now you've mastered that skill. And that's really what sales is mastering and getting over the fear of who you think that voice is telling you not to do it. That's what it's about. And then being able to convince people on why they need to take care and buy your product.
Absolutely. Well, I do have some questions from the students. These are really good. This first one is Edward Flowers. He's in 10th grade, member of our band here. And he asked, I
Okay.
want to be an entrepreneur. So how can financial literacy help me as I'm opening a business?
Edward, right?
Yep.
That was Edward. Okay. Edward, congratulations. You want to be an entrepreneur. I'm so happy for you. So how can financial literacy help you? So let's think about it. You're going to open up a business, but at the end of the day, depending on what that business is going to be, you're going to have to know, obviously, financial literacy, because in the end of the day, you have to know your product. When knowing your product, you're going to have to be able to account for how much does this product cost? When this product comes in, are you going to be able to charge? You're going to have to charge. Are you shipping it out? Are people coming to get it? So let's talk about that cost. From that cost, if we're going to ship out, then we're going to have to be able to assign costs to that particular product. And then are you going to add that product cost into your, into that? Are you going to add that cost into your actual online cost to your customers? So when you start to look at this business, how are you going to look about inventory? Inventory is going to make a huge role in terms of your marketing. How many products are you going to have? You can go into what does the shipping cost look like? How many products are you going to have people that work for you? Are you going to get paid out of that, right? Who's going to be helping with your marketing budget? Okay. Are you going to have items to help you create your marketing? Are you going to have a box, a brand? Again, all of those things. Are you going to give out different things as it relates to your marketing? Are you going to pass out supplies? I can go on and on all the stuff you're going to need. So from a financial literacy standpoint, you're going to have to know your numbers, right? How much money are you working with? So we're going to have to know all of those things, because when I get ready to ultimately charge for that particular product, you need to make sure all of your marketing dollars are covering all of those costs as it relates to your new business. So good luck to you. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do.
Yeah, he's got a lot of talent. This is Levon Johnson. He's also in 10th grade. Very talented
Okay.
photographer. And he asked, what are
Okay.
some other things my bank can do for me other than having a checking account?
So, Leman, you are going to get into, obviously, you're a photographer. So let's think about it. You're going to actually get into wanting more supplies and different camera, and maybe having a studio, maybe, right? So your bank may be able to help assist you with that. Because if you think about that, those may be some very expensive, depending on where you're going to live and actually have this photography studio. And some of the camera equipment is very costly. You're going to need your bank to be able to maybe help you with maybe a loan, a small loan. From there, your bank may be able and will be able, at some point, you're going to need your bank to be able to help you. I'm sure at some point you're going to want to get what? A home. So they're going to need your photography skills, and all the money you're going to make through your business is going to have to funnel through your particular bank. And so they're going to need to see all of those things to verify your income, since you are employed. So you're going to have to definitely make sure all of your stuff is lined up to ensure that as you go into buying a house, your bank and all of that information is set up right to be able to be structured for you to be able to buy a house. So that's what some of the things that your bank can do for you.
Absolutely. Well, I've got time for one more. This is Shania Smith. She's in 10th grade, one of our volleyball players here. And she asked, obviously,
Okay.
your job is very hard. What's the hardest thing about it?
That's a good one. I don't think I would say that making sure I can educate people in the sense is more challenging. I wouldn't say hard. It's challenging because there's so much information. Your teacher just told you that we have had to I have to try to go back and help people rethink about. We haven't been taught financial literacy. We haven't been taught savings and budgets and why it's important. So one of the things that I'm often tasked with is helping people understand the importance of savings, understand the importance of not yet, waiting, right? Because we live in a society where we want it right now. And so if you're buying a house, I have to tell you, don't spend your money right now. You're an adult or a young adult, and I'm telling you, you can't go spend any money because we're in the process of buying this house, and or I'm trying to help you with maximizing some money on some other stuff on an investment process. That's hard for people because in their minds, I'm an adult. You can't tell me that. So it's challenging to tell people that because sometimes they don't see the big picture. So I do find myself educating a lot as it relates to the end goal. And then once I can remember and remind you that the end goal is really what you're looking for, then it makes it a little bit easier. So that will be my answer to that question.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us again. It's just amazing all the work you're doing. But before we go, a couple things. First of all, tell us where to find your website with all the information about my coins. And I know you said you got a workbook coming out, and also if anybody's interested in any real estate, where to find you online as well.
Absolutely. So you can just go to www.brandeeharrington.com. It will take you to anywhere, whether you want to go to real estate or you want to go to My Coins Journal, or if you need just to be able to start getting ready to really start working on your budgeting and things like that. We have some free resources on how to get started with that, with a worksheet on really starting to help you understand how to get ready to ensure you're knowing where your money is going. That's found at www.mycoinsjournal.com. Coinz journal.com/resources. And so you will see that free resource tool out there, which will allow you to be able to start really storing your coins to ensure you know exactly where they're going. So you're no longer guessing.
Now, the last thing before we go, I have lost count of the amount of students that have come back to me and said, I wish I would have paid attention. Because I know when you're 15, 16 years old, this isn't stuff you want to think about. You're worried about your friends and all the cool stuff in high school, and that's great. But why is it so important to at least be familiar with these topics and these concerns while you're in high school getting ready to prepare for your next step in life?
The reason why these topics are very important while you get ready to prepare in life is that these will be skills that you always need. You're going to always need to know about money. You're going to always need to know about obviously savings and budgeting. So these are not skills that you're going to lose out, after you leave school. These are lifelong skills that you're forever going to need, and you want to make sure you know how to get it right now. Oftentimes we get into adulthood and we're like, oh, I wish I would have learned it. If you ever heard someone say that, it's because they wish if they'd have learned earlier, they would be in a far better place now, or where they are now, had they listened. So to your point earlier, if you will know about money now, you can be able to make better financial decisions to be able to ensure that as you get on jobs, you're matching 401k, things of that nature. You can be able to grow your money exponentially more because you started at a younger age, which means by the time you reach 40, 50, 60, whatever that looks like for you, you'll have way more money because you started at an earlier age because you learned it now. So this is why having these type of conversations, you doing exactly what you're doing, bringing a wealth of resources into the area is a huge advantage to people and students alike, because once you can learn it now, you'll be able to be far better than most people at the same place years from now, just by simply being in your class and having these access to them. So thank you so much for what you do.
I appreciate you. But again, Brandee Harrington, right down the road, My Coins Journal. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, Greg. Have a good one. Y'all have a good
All
one.
right.
Bye-bye.
See you.